Please start, Vivek.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Good evening, IGNU learners. I am Vivek and be taking your research exam today and then 3 days ahead as well. So I'll be talking about the research in psychology. I'll be talking about all the processes involved. What is research? What is variable? What is hypothesis? Everything which is related to research will be carried on these 4 days. Now, it is very important to understand what research is first. Research means, if I break this word, it says re and then search, which means we keep on investigating, we keep on looking into the things, we keep on investigating, we keep on coming up with new theories, we keep on coming up with new concepts where we particular kind do a research on various things. Now the important question over here comes up: why do we need research? And what is the research, what is the relationship between research and psychology? Now as I said, research is reinvestigating, looking into things again and again, looking into the behavioral aspects again and again. Now, psychology as is this discipline, independent discipline, where we try to look into the behavior, we try to study human behavior, we try to study the experiences and the mental processes. Now, but why do we need research in psychology? Is because probably because every if I take last 5 years or if I take 10 years ahead, my focus of research could be that why is there behavioral change among adolescents? Why do we see so much of aggression among adolescents in these days? So this is what my research would focus on. For example, if I want to do a research to see the organizational structure or the employees who are working in different organizations, so my focus would be that the kind of research or the employees who are working in an organization, are they satisfied or not? So I would come up with the relationship to study that whether the employees who are working in an organization, if they're high on satisfaction, are they high on commitment too? So what I'll do is I'll collect data, I'll formulate hypotheses based upon different conditions. I would come up with different theoretical based work. I would come up with objectives and all that. So मेरा कहने का मतलब क्या है यहाँ पर, that when we are doing research, we are trying to investigate from the very topmost thing, where I am starting with planning with the things. Now, your first book, which is the basic process or concept in research. Now, as I said, research is, if I break this word, it's re and search. Re means again and again, again and again, coming up with the theories, coming up with the new investigations that we come across, and search is investigating something again and again. Now, there are few definitions of Kurlinger, 1973. It is very important to understand, learners, that there is a difference between when you call a definition and a meaning. Definition would always be by one or the other author or a psychologist in a specific area or a specific field. Meaning is just elaborating those definitions, could be the meaning associated with that particular term. Now, according to Kurlinger, it's Kerlinger, in 1973, defines research as a systematic, controlled, empirical, and critical investigation of hypothetical propositions about the presumed relationship about various phenomena. Now, he says that research is systematic and controlled investigation. Obviously, when I'm doing a research, my main focus would be looking into what my aim is, what my objective is, and to fulfill that objective, I will do something which is very systematic in nature. I cannot just jump into hypothesis. I cannot just jump into data collection. I cannot just jump into statistical analysis. before that I need to look into what my aim is, what I have to do, what my research would be. I have to see what relationships I would be looking into. I would be defining the variables first as well. So it is a systematic, it is a controlled as well. Research is always about controlling, controlling in the sense that, for example, if I am doing a research in an organization, the employees who are giving me the data, the employees who are acting as the participants in my research, they would be doing it in a controlled environment. For example, in their office, it's an empirical investigation. Empirical investigation means that the investigation that is done in a systematic, in a planned, in a scientific way. And when we do it in a scientific way, we say it's an empirical investigation of hypothetical propositions. Now, hypothetical matlab kya hota hai? Hypothetical means assuming something. For example, if I see that, okay, today the children might be stressed about, or children during exams are stressed about their exams, how would they be going through the exams? Now my hypothesis is that obviously everyone is stressed during exams. So my hypothesis to this would be that the students who are stressed, my main objective is to lower down their stress level during exams so that they can do well in their exams. So to lower down, I would say I would do a meditation with those students. So that is my assumption, that that is my hypothesis, that meditation will help the students in reducing the exam anxiety or the exam stress. So I'm assuming something. So obviously before research, every researcher comes up with the hypothesis or the assumption that this is what the result can be. वो रिसर्च की जब हम स्टैटिस्टिकल एनालिसिस करते हैं, उसके ऊपर बेस करता है whether my hypothesis proved to be right or wrong. So these Kalinga said that yes, it's a hypothetical propositions about the presumed relationship about various phenomena. Presumed relationship का मतलब क्या है? For example, I have just given you an example that employee who is satisfied at their workplace, and they are committed at the workplace. It means both the relationships are positive relationship, because if satisfaction is high, the commitment would be high as well. Or if the commitment is high, the satisfaction would be high as well. So both the variables, they are being controlled, they are being studied in a very systematic, in a very planned way, and that is what research is. Next definition is about Burns. By Burns in 1994, he defines research as a systematic investigation to find answers to a problem. Before we before we start assuming things, obviously we have the objective of the study as well. So in order to meet my objectives, in order to meet my aims, I would be doing the investigation where I will be answering to few of my questions, and those questions are nothing but my hypothesis, that okay, this is what I'm trying to say, this is my objective, and my hypothesis would be to find out whether there's a positive correlation or whatever my hypothesis would be. So it is Burns says in 1994, he defines research as a systematic investigation to find answers to a problem. Now coming on to the next part, students, is my voice audible to everyone?
Yes, please.
Okay. Now the next is what are the good research? What is a good research? A research which is a systematic, which is a planned investigation, is a quality, is a good research. Now, but there are few qualities of a good research. The first is that good research is a systematic research. As Kalinga talked about in his definition, as Burns talked about in his definition, the first main quality of a good research is that it is always systematic. You cannot just jump into any of the point and start working over it. It happens in a very systematic, in a very planned, in a very organized way. So good research is always a research which follows a system. The second is good research is empirical. Obviously, empirical means doing a scientific investigation where you go to the to the people who are part of your sample. You go to them, you collect the data, you collect their responses, and therefore then you do the statistical analysis. So everything when we do it collectively makes a research as an empirical research. Next is good research is valid and verifiable. It is it has to be a valid research. You cannot just you cannot just pick up any topic and or pick up any of the variable and you say it's a valid research. Good research has to be a valid. It has to be verifiable as well. Verifiable in the sense, for example, if I'm doing a research today on any of the topic or any of the variable, it has to be verified ahead as well. It should be verified as well whether, for example, if I'm saying about stress or exam anxiety, do does that anxiety is always with the students, or is it during the exams only, or is it during just the board exams, or is it during the exams that happens in school as well? So we need to check whether a behavior that a particular individual is showing, it has to be verified so that things can be taken ahead. Next is good research is logical. It is always based on logics. Research. Why do I need to do a research? What are my aims? What are my objectives? Why am I, picking up statistical analysis? Because I have to come out with a conclusion. So obviously, everything that we do in a research, from being the from taking the aims till we do the statistical analysis, it's always a logic that is behind a good research. Good research develop theories and principles. Research also comes up with different theories. There are researches that goes on and on, which comes up with new theories. You would have come across various theories. For example, learning chapter, classical conditioning is there, where Pavlov did, the experiments on dog. You would have seen theory by Skinner, where he talked about rewards and punishment. So there are theories which can always be looked into, the principles that can also always be looked into, where either I can, for example, the theory that I'm just talking about of classical conditioning that was conducted years ago. So are they are they valid today as well? If not, then what are the changes that's supposed to be done? So that can be also a good research, that can be accountable to the good research, because it develops theories and principles in time, by time and time. Sometimes the theories needs to be changed, they needs to be updated from time to time, because as the time goes on, the behavioral patterns of people changes as well. Now, next, this is about the good research. What are the qualities of a good research? This is what we talked about. The next important topic is steps in research process. Now, research is a process, from identification, from identifying a problem, coming up with the aims and the objectives, till you do the statistical analysis, you come up with some interpretation, you come up with some conclusion. It is a research, it's a process, and because it's a process, there are steps in it. The first step is identification of the problem. It's very, very important. What are you what's the problem is, how do you identify, what are the variables that you will be taking in, is very important, because your research would always be based upon problem. Why do you want to do a research? Why do you think that you need to look into employees? Why do you think you need to look into the behavioral problems of adolescents? Why do you think you need to study students during exams? Because these are the main components. The life of the students, the life of the people, are actually are actually an important part to be always talked upon. So identification of the problem is the first thing. After identify the problem, the second is formulating a hypothesis. Now, what is hypothesis? Hypothesis is a tentative solution to a problem. I need to formulate a hypothesis as well. The research says, or the the statistics says that we always choose a null hypothesis. Null hypothesis means that there is no difference between the variables that I'm trying to study. So formulating a hypothesis is a second step where I am assuming out something. Now, my hypothesis would always be based upon reading through the literature that has already, where the researches had already been done on the same variables. For example, why do I say that there is a positive relationship between job commitment and job satisfaction? Because that's what the previous researchers says, that this is what the meaning of the job satisfaction and job commitment is, being satisfied at the work and being committed at the work. So one variable is influencing in the same direction. So that, where is that coming from? Where am I putting that hypothesis? Is from the previous literature that has been conducting different researches on the same variables that I'm trying to study. Is it clear till over here? Anyone has any question or something?
Yes, sir.
Clear,
Pretty
sir.
clear.
Clear, sir.
Okay, okay. Now the next step is identifying, manipulating, and controlling variables. We need to identify the variables first. What is my independent variable? What is my dependent variable? What can be the extraneous variables? Independent variable is the variable. Yes, independent that I'll be covering ahead. So it is very important to identify my variables. What are my variables to be studied? Are they variables okay? Are they can they be looked into the relationship? Is one variable affecting the other variable? You need to the third step also talked about the manipulation of the variables as well. Sometimes we need to manipulate it as well, change it as well. And the third is the controlling of variables. It is also important. Sometimes you need to control the variables. The extraneous variables are such variables which has to be controlled so that it does not affect the dependent and the independent variable. The next step is formulating a research design. It's very important. What kind of design will I be talking about? For example, depending upon independent variable, depending upon your dependent variable and independent variable, the research design is formulated. The next is constructing devices for observation and management, sample selection and data collection. It's also very important that you need to look into who would be your sample. There are two things when you do a research. One is population and the other one is the sample. Now, for example, I want to do a research in Chandigarh, and Chandigarh being, there are about 11 to 14 lakhs people who are there in Chandigarh. So I cannot go to everyone and collect data. So out of that particular population, which is Chandigarh, I might select, okay, I will pick up the sample from Punjab University. So I'll go to Punjab University. Now, Punjab University being the true representative of the entire population, which is Chandigarh, is my sample. So instead of collecting all the population, I need to pick up the true representative of that particular population, and that becomes my sample. So sample is nothing but a true representative of the entire population, because I cannot go to everyone, I cannot go to door in Chandigarh and ask for, ask as a sample. So I need to select a sample first as well, that who gonna be the true representative for my research. So this is about sample selection and data collection. After I have selected the sample, I need to go to them and I need to get the my data to be collected. Now this is what is sample collection and data collection. Next step is data analysis and their interpretation. Now, MAPC, I have got the objectives, I have got the hypothesis. On the basis of those things, I will be analyzing my data and I will be interpreting as well. Data analysis would be done through the statistical techniques that we will be using. Now that is entirely based upon what are my hypotheses, and whether my hypothesis, as I already said, that when we do research, we always formulate a null hypothesis that shows there is no significant relationship or difference between the group, for example, or the people or the variables. So data analysis के अंदर we look into whether whether the interpretation or the results that have come up, whether they support, do they prove my hypothesis or do they reject my hypothesis. So it can be both ways, either proving it or either rejecting it. And interpretation is done on the basis of the analysis. Interpretation is done on the basis of the the result that comes up. For example, if my hypothesis is that there is no significant relationship between stress and depression, but my results say shows that yes, there is a significant difference, then I will say that my hypothesis proved wrong, because my current analysis shows that there is a relationship between these two variables. So it is done, the interpretation is done on the basis of the result that you get. After this is drawing conclusion. On the basis of the interpretation, we draw conclusion, and then the preparation of report and publication is done. We prepare a report, we try to get it published, is the next step. Now, next is, what is the importance of research in psychology? If I talk about just in psychology, yes, we do come up as, because psychology is the only discipline that studies human behavior, because by time to time, by situation to situation, because of different environmental conditions, because of different environmental conditions, yeah, the very the behavior of the person keeps on changing. For example, even if we look into our daily routine activities, sometimes our emotions are positive, sometimes our emotions are negative. So our behavior keeps on changing, and from time to time, if I look into from last 10 years to now 10 years or 10 years ahead, the things would entirely be different. And that is what the research in psychology have its own importance, because of the change in the behavioral conditions of the people. Therefore, the research needs to be done continuously in psychology, so that the behaviors, the behavioral aspects to the society is always being updated as the time goes on and on. So this is about importance of research. Now, next very important topic is about reliability and validity. Is it clear to everyone till now? Any question? Should I go ahead?
Yes, sir.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, now the important topic is about, the next is about reliability and validity. Now, what are these, and what are they related with, and how are they related with research? Reliability means consistency. I'll just explain you after giving the meaning to this. Reliability is consistency of scores. Now, what is consistency of scores? After you go through the theory, after your theory classes, you would be having your practical classes as well, where you will be dealing with all the psychological questionnaires, tools, and you go on with the practical sessions. Now, every psychology, for example, personality is one of your psychology practical, which you will be doing ahead. Now, any psychological test or any psychological component that you would try to measure will have its own independent manual. Now, उस manual में क्या होता है? उस manual के अंदर you get all the details related to that questionnaire, that where that questionnaire can be used, on what kind of people the questionnaire can be used, what is the scoring procedure of that particular questionnaire. Now, why I'm going all this? Because that is what is concerned with reliability and validity. Now, as I've given you the example of personality, reliability means consistency of scores. जिसका मतलब क्या है? For example, let's take personality as an example. For example, you choose, okay, Punjab University students are the best people to be taken as the sample. You go to them, get your questionnaires fulfilled, and you get your scores of personality of every individual. Now, what will happen is after 6 months, you again go to the same people with the same questionnaire. Now, because there are two different conditions, you have collected the same data using the same questionnaire in two different timings, in two different, for example, if you have done it today and 6 months after, so it's two different scores. So the scores, when you apply on the same people, the questionnaire, when you apply on the same people twice or thrice, every time when you do the same, when you use the same questionnaire on the same people, it would provide a similar result. That is what is called reliability, because it will provide, it will give the similar results. Therefore, that is what is termed as the consistency of scores. The scores would be consistent, the score would always remain same. For example, if I take the intelligence of 16 years of child, and this child comes out to be highly intellectual, after 6 months again I conduct the same test on same child, it will again come up with the same interpretation. That means consistency of scores. That means reliability. So reliability means consistency of scores. Clear? Now, consistency of scores, the reliability can be checked through different, there are different procedures through which we can do the reliability of the test. For example, if there are 100 items, items, in psychology are the questions that are, or the statements that are there in the questionnaire. So questionnaire के अंदर जो statements होती हैं, हम उनको items बोलते हैं. Okay. Now, for example, the first method of checking the reliability is test retest reliability. Test retest means, for example, if I do the test today and after 6 months on the same people using the same test, it should produce similar results. That is the test retest reliability. Second is split half reliability. Split half ke andar, for example, if I've taken if I've taken the if there are 100 statements, and for example out of 100 statements, I split the items into 50-50, first 50 and then 50. That is what is called split half reliability. Now, split half can be done in various methods. Either I take first 50 and then next 50, or it can also be splitted on odd even numbers as well. For example, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 will be first split, which is the odd numbers, and then even numbers 1, 2, 4, 6, 8. So it can be splitted on those particular aspects. So these are the various, the methods of checking reliability based upon different methods. Now, the second one is the validity. What is validity? Validity means, that the test should measure what it intends to measure. जिसका मतलब क्या है? For example, जैसे अभी हमने, we took the example of personality, we took the example of intelligence. Now, the statements in the personality questionnaire should only measure personality. The statements in intelligence test should only measure intelligence. The the test of, or the questionnaire of, for example, aptitude should only measure aptitude. The questionnaire of interest should only measure interest. So if it is measuring, if all the statements is measuring what it intends to measure, it means it is a valid test. Okay, clear हुआ? This is about the reliability and the validity of the test. Now, next thing is, next topic is about variables. Now, what are variables? How do we define variable? Variable means something that varies, something that changes. Obviously, if I look into, when I'm doing a research, I need to look into the variable, what I'm trying to measure, what I'm trying to look into. So variable is nothing but something that varies. Now, for example, we are sitting in a room. If the fan is slow, or if the light is very dim, will change the light, will change the intensity of the light, will change the volume of the fan. So that particular light and fan are the variables, because it can be changed, it can be manipulated, it can be altered, it can be controlled as well. So that is what is called as the variable. Now variables can under variables there are three important variables that will always be talking about. For example, independent variable, dependent variable, and extraneous variable. Now independent variable is a variable which can be manipulated by the researcher. Depending a dependent variable, on the other hand, is dependent upon the independent variable. Now independent variable is also known as the cause, and dependent variable is the assumed effect. Independent variable is the cause and dependent variable is the effect. Now for example, I want to do a research on looking into the smoking effect of smoking on heart disease. That is my topic of research. So I want to see whether the smoking, is it affecting the is it influencing the heart disease or not. So smoking would be my independent variable, and my heart disease would be the dependent variable. Now the extraneous, these are the independent variable and the dependent variable. The third that I said is the extraneous variable. Now extraneous variables are the variables that can affect the study, that can affect both my independent variable and the dependent variable. Now what can be the extraneous variable when I'm trying to study the effect of smoking on coronary heart disease? Now the extraneous variable can be, for example, what is the age of the person. Now the age of the person can be one of the factor that is affecting my independent variable and dependent variable. Obviously if the age of the person is about 70 years, the smoking would obviously affect the heart disease. If it's a younger one, if the age of the person is about 20 years or 25 years, it will affect, but not to much extent. So the age of the person would act as the extraneous variable, because it is affecting my study. The second can be the extent of his or her smoking. How much time does the person smokes? Once a week, once a month, twice in a day, thrice in a day, four times in a day, four times in a week. So it does affect as well. So that can affect my my independent variable and dependent variable and act as an extraneous variable. The third can be the duration of smoking. How much, what is the duration of the smoking? 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, how much does it take? So extent, and obviously how much exercise do I how much exercise do I do. So these are the some of the extraneous variables that can actually affect my independent and the dependent variables. Student learners, am I going fast?
No, sir, it's fine.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Or, sorry sir.
yes, sir. You're everything is fine. Everything is clear.
So your voice is breaking down. Sorry, what you said?
Just
Is it going fine with everyone? No? Right. Okay. Now, now the next is hypothesis, formulation, and sampling. Now, what is hypothesis? As we already discussed, hypothesis is nothing but the a testable statement of any variable. For example, the definition by McGuigan in 1990, it's MCGUIGAN. He defined hypothesis as a testable statement of a potential relationship between two or more variables. Hypothesis always, like for example, when you do a research can be done on two variables, it can be done on three variables, it can be done on four variables, or depending upon the problem, depending upon your interest, depending upon what you are trying to looking into. So your hypothesis can always be your variables can be according to your problem, according to what you are looking into, according to what are you trying to measure. So he says that hypothesis is a testable statement. It has to be tested. It is a statement. For example, the example to the hypothesis can be there exists no significant difference on smoking on gender. जिसका मतलब क्या है कि मैं ये कह रहा हूं that whether males or females, if they do smoking, it will not affect them. This is my hypothesis that I am trying to test. So it's a testable statement. You need to, whatever hypothesis, whatever assumptions that you made should always be a testable statement, so that what you are trying to measure should be either proved right or proved wrong, depending upon what results do you get. So a testable statement of a potential relationship between two or more variables. For example, it's a testable, McGuigan says it is a testable statement of potential relationship between two or more variables. If my research focuses on looking into the relationships between the variables, it has to be testable, that whether whatever the research up to or till date says, is it according to my assumptions or not. Whether for example, if I say the first example that I quoted today when we started with the class is, for example, if I want to study the job satisfaction and commitment of an employee, that is a testable statement that implies there is no, I would say that there is no relationship between, or there is no significant relationship between job commitment and job satisfaction among employees. But my result says yes, there is a significant relationship. So in this case, the hypothesis would prove wrong. But if my research says, or if my result says that yes, it's not, there is no significant relationship, I would say that yes, whatever the research till date has been saying, my research also says the same thing. Therefore, my hypothesis proved right. So it has to be tested. Whatever I assume, it has to be tested, and on the basis of that, we try to look into the variables that I am trying to study. Kurlinger in 1973, he defined hypothesis is a statement of the relation between two or more variables. It's the same that McGuigan says, that it's a testable statement where we're trying to study two or more variables, or we're trying to study the relationship between such variables. Now, there are few characteristics of hypothesis. It says hypothesis should be conceptually clear. Concept needs to be cleared. If I am not clear about my variables, my hypothesis will not be clear. So in order to give the right hypothesis, in order to give the clear hypothesis, conceptually clear hypothesis, it is very important. I need to understand the variables very, very much. Second is hypothesis must be testable. It has to be tested. Whether my hypothesis, whether whatever I assumed, whatever I have assumed can be tested either by proving right or proving wrong. So hypothesis should always be testable. Third is hypothesis should be related to the existing body or theory and impact. It should always be related to existing body. For example, it is always said that yes, before we start making the hypothesis, it is very important to understand or to read the existing literature of the same topic, so that you come to know what is the relationship between those variables, what are the researches that has been done till date on such variables. It is very important to understand those factors, because if you understand, or if you read the theories that, or if you read the researches that has already been done on the same variables that you are trying to study, it becomes somewhat easier for us to do the research ahead. So it's very important to understand and to read what the researchers till date has been doing it, so that either we modify it by within the existing literature, or we come up with the new theories. So it's depend upon what are we trying to study. The next is hypothesis should have logical unity and comprehensiveness. It has to be based upon logics. If I'm trying to say a relationship between one variable and the second variable and the third variable, there has to be logic behind it. Why am I picking those variables? Is one variable affecting the other variable? Is there any relationship of one variable with the second variable? If there is a relationship, what kind of relationship is there with of one variable with the other variable? Is it a positive correlation or a negative relationship? If one variable is affecting the other variable, what is affecting them? It's very important to have a logic when we do a research, because until and unless we won't study, the logic won't come in. And once the logic won't come in, it will the interpretation would be affected. Then my whole research would be affected because of not understanding the logic behind doing a research. Next is hypothesis should be capable of verification. It should always be verified. For example, if a research has been done 5 years back, and today I read that research and today I say, okay, no, I think things has changed, and therefore the manipulation has to be done with the hypothesis, or I need to test the same hypothesis. So I'll pick up the hypothesis, I'll test it again today, which was tested 5 years back. So it has to be verified again and again. It can be verified. Hypothesis should be built in such a manner, it should be made in such a manner that it needs to have the capacity to be verified again and again. Because as we say, we are talking about here is the human behavior. Human behavior can be changed, can be altered because of the environmental conditions, because of many other conditions, because of the internal and external factors as well. For example, 6 years back I was something else, today I'm something else, because of internal as well as external factors. Probably external factors changes your internal factors, or internal factors changes your external factors. So it has to be verified again and again. And the last one is hypothesis should be operationalized. It should always be operating. For example, if my hypothesis is being made today, does not mean it cannot be testable in a 6 years time. So if the hypothesis is verifiable, if it can be verified with time again and again, it means the hypothesis is also operationable. Now next is formulation of hypothesis. Now formulation of hypothesis ke andar there are certain points which are important while formulating a hypothesis. The first is expected relationship or differences between the variables. I need to understand that the variables, as a researcher, it's very important for us to understand what is the relationship between the variables that I'm studying, whether I'm trying to study. Is a relationship positive relationship, or there is a negative relationship? Or if it's a positive correlation, to what extent it's the relationship, what effect that relationship has? For example, whether it's a high correlation, or is it it's a low correlation, or is it a moderate relationship? So you need to see what kind of relationship do those variables have. Or you also need to see the differences between the variables. For example, if I'm trying to study if I'm trying to study a gender difference on emotional intelligence, I would say, okay, males and females, my hypothesis can be that there is no significant difference on gender on emotional intelligence, which means males and females, they are similar on emotional intelligence. So you need to understand those variables. You need to find out what kind of differences can you see among the variables. Or the other example can be, for example, if I am trying to study the emotional intelligence of employees, am I looking into the emotional intelligence of people who are working on different hierarchies? Because every organization has its own hierarchy. Or I might just looking into the gender differences. I might look into the differences in relation to their to the hierarchy that they are working on, which means, for example, there is a senior manager, there is a manager, under manager there are employees. What kind of people am I looking into? And accordingly I need to look into the two things. First is the relationship, and the second one is the differences between those variables on different perspective. Next is operational definition of variable. It's very important that the variable that you're trying to study should have a definition, an operational definition, which can be which can be formulated, and hypothesis can be formulated on such variables. The next is hypotheses are formulated following the review of literature. As I said before as well, that the hypotheses that we make are made on the basis of the existing literature. For example, if I say there is a positive correlation between job satisfaction and job commitment, it means I have looked into the previous researches that have concluded that yes, there is a positive correlation between these two variables. Or for example, if I'm trying to looking into the relationship between temperature and sound. There is no relationship between temperature and sound. So I need to look into what kind of relationship do they have. Is there enough literature that is available to support my results or not? So I need to look all those factors while formulating a hypothesis. Now, according to Russell in 1947, he says that the hypothesis should be stated in the logical form on the journal implications. A hypothesis can be put in the form as in statement A or B. So, he says that it has to be logical in the form, and it should be implied on the general population. This is what the Russell in 1947 talked about. Now, there are two kinds of hypothesis. One is the null hypothesis, and second is the alternative hypothesis. It's a rule of a research that whenever you formulate a hypothesis, whenever you do a research, your research should always have null hypothesis. It is the most important thing before we start conducting a research, that your hypothesis should always be on the null hypothesis. Now, what do these two hypotheses mean? Null hypothesis assumes or says that there is no relationship between, or there is no difference between the two variables or the two groups that I'm trying to study. It indicates the null hypothesis. Okay. Now, null hypothesis, it is useful in testing the significance of difference. Whether if I'm saying significant of difference, which means that if I'm trying to looking into the gender difference, whether there is a difference between males and females on the variables that I'm trying to study or not. Or for example, if I'm trying to study the teachers, whether the primary teachers are more stressful, or the secondary teachers are more stressful. So I need to look into whether there is a significant difference between the groups that I'm trying to study or not. So null hypothesis always assumes that there is a significant difference. There is no significant difference between the variables, or there is no significant difference. There is no significant relationship or differences between the groups that I'm trying to study. The alternative hypothesis, on the other hand, assumes or states that, first of all, we try to prove null hypothesis. As a researcher, our main concern is always to prove the null hypothesis. If not, then alternative hypothesis. Whether there is, for example, alternative hypothesis says that, for example, if there is no significant difference, if males and females are different, then who is high, whether males or females? That is done through the alternative hypothesis. The next is the errors in testing hypothesis. What are the errors that we can come across while doing a research or while testing hypothesis? The first is sampling procedure.
Excuse
Hello?
Hello.
The voice isn't audible, sir.
Sir, hypothesis करेंगे.
Sir, I cannot hear you, sir. Sorry.
Sir, alternative hypothesis करेंगे.
Sir, I cannot hear you.
Sir, message you.
Your voice is breaking too much, sir. It's breaking a lot.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. May I audible, sir?
Yeah. Same, sir.
Sir, you can simply say that to the student, just if they have any query, they can pass a message, and you can read the message. From there, you can answer our question, sir. That is the student decision for us, sir.
Right. Yeah, the question can be put on, and then afterwards we can reply to those queries. That can be, the most important thing or the easiest thing that can happen. So you can always put your queries. You can message them so that whenever we get time, we can, answer your queries. Is that fine, sir?
प्रिय विद्यार्थी, अगर आपका कोई प्रश्न है तो जब आपको कहा जाए उस टाइम पे आप पूछ सकते हैं। जब नॉर्मली हम क्या करते हैं कि प्रत्येक कक्षा के बाद एक छोटा सा सेशन रखते हैं क्वेश्चन आंसर का। आप उस टाइम पे अपनी बात को रख सकते हैं या जो चैट बॉक्स है वहां पे अपने मैसेज को डाल सकते हैं। विवेक जी, जैसे ही कक्षा आपकी तरफ से एंड होगी, एक बार चैट बॉक्स को आप चेक कर लेंगे। अगर उसमें कोई क्वेश्चन अवेलेबल है तो उसका आप उत्तर देने का प्रयास करें। अगर आज उपलब्ध है तो ठीक है, नहीं तो कल भी दे सकते हैं, कोई ऐसा विषय नहीं है।
श्योर सर। धन्यवाद सर। थैंक यू सर।
ओके, अभी कुछ है ना? अभी और भी है ना?
हाँ जी सर, बस थोड़ा सा और है।
प्लीज हाँ, थोड़ा सा और है, कर लीजिए।
हाँ जी। थैंक यू सर। ओके, नाउ द नेक्स्ट इज important. Where was I? Yes, the errors in testing hypothesis. The first is the sampling procedure adopted. If the sampling procedure is faulty, it leads to the errors in testing a hypothesis. It is very important that the sampling that I'm trying to do, the technique that I'm taking to collect the data should be adequate, should be according to the hypothesis that I'm trying to study. The second is a data collection method inaccurate. If the data collection method is not proper, for example, that I'm collecting data, I'm just giving the questionnaires to someone to get it fulfilled from someone, that can actually create a wrong responses. And once you get the wrong responses, it will affect your results. And once the results is gets affected in a negative way, it will affect your research as well. The purpose of research will not be solved. So it is very important. Next is study design selected is faulty. If my design is wrong, if my design is faulty, whatever I'm trying to study is not being studied as per my criteria, as per what I thought of measuring, so it will again create a error in your testing hypothesis. The conclusions, inappropriate statistical method. It's very important that once you select your hypothesis, you need to give answer to that to that hypothesis by using the correct statistical method. But if you use a wrong statistical method, it will not give you a proper result, and therefore it will affect your results, and it will create an error in your results. And the next is conclusion draws are incorrect. Conclusions need to be properly drawn, should be correctly drawn. Now, there are two more errors that while testing a hypothesis. The first is the type 1 error, and second one is type 2 error. Now, type 1 error says rejection of a null hypothesis when it is true, and type 2 error is the acceptance of a null hypothesis when it is false. Right. Please, learners, please go through the today's modules, which are there, which has been given to you, provided by the IGNOU, so that when I have a class tomorrow, before starting with the next thing, I would take 5 minutes to solve your today's lecture queries if you have. But yes, if you have now, you can always ask me. You can ask now.
May I ask?
Hello.
May I ask something?
Hello.
Sir, hello. Am I
Hello,
audible, sir?
शाइना बोलिए।
बोलिए मैम।
सर, आपने जो ये स्प्लिट हाफ रिलायबिलिटी का कराया था, तो इसमें शायद कुछ टेस्ट भी है, खुदा रिचर्डसन एस्टिमेट टेस्ट है, या कॉन्वेक्स अल्फा,
हाँ
ये
जी मैम।
फॉर्मूला है, इनको हाउ टू, आई मीन इनको कैसे अप्लाई करेंगे? कैन यू प्लीज एक्सप्लेन, या इसको आप इसके बारे में कुछ बता सकते हैं तो?
मैम इसको जब हम अप्लाई करेंगे, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल आप फॉर्मूलास की बात करें, हाउ टू यूज इट।
हाँ, मतलब अगर हमें हमें फॉर आवर ओन टीम हमने करना है तो इन कैसे अप्लाई करना है, या ये प्रैक्टिकल में ही होगा, ये थ्योरी में नहीं आएगा, या
नहीं नहीं मैम, ये प्रैक्टिकल्स में वी वोंट बी डूइंग दीज इन प्रैक्टिकल्स, नो नो नो। मैम ये क्या होता है, ये जो हमारी रिलायबिलिटी या वैलिडिटी है, या जो आप क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे हो, ये जो स्प्लिट हाफ का फर्दर रिचर्डसन का ये जो फॉर्मूला है, इट इज अ वेरी टेक्निकल थिंग व्हेन यू try to test the reliability of the questionnaire. For example, what happens is, ma'am, when the test comes out in a market to be used for the public, it is tested on various parameters. It is tested on different dimensions. For example, reliability is one, validity is one. तो ये जो चीजें, they are not according to they won't be there in your practicals. These are the technicalities of testing the reliability of any of the questionnaire if you are trying to make it in the future.
So we need not go into much of the details about these topics, no?
Ma'am,
We
just to
have an idea.
you just need to know, you need to understand what it is and how to use them. What is the necessity of it? That's it.
Okay, sir.
Hello?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Most welcome, ma'am.
So can you please explain the alternative hypothesis once again?
Ma'am, alternative hypothesis is like, there are two, as I explained. One is the null hypothesis, jahan par there is no significant difference or relationship between the variables. But when I say alternative, under alternative hypothesis, I would say that yes, if there is a relationship, what kind of relationship do we have? Is it a positive relationship, or is it a negative relationship? You know, it's going on to the alternative one. अगर है तो कैसा है?
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
You're most welcome.
एक बार सभी विद्यार्थी अपने वीडियो ऑन कर लें, एक फोटो हो जाए आप सभी की। विवेक जी प्लीज।
जी सर।
थैंक यू
सर, थैंक यू सर।
और सभी लर्नर्स के लिए भी एक सूचना भी है कि आपका जो कोड है वो यही रहेगा नेक्स्ट 3 डेज भी। 4 डे की क्लास रहेगी MAPC 4 की, आज एक हो गई है, नेक्स्ट 3 रहेंगी, तो तीनों का सेम डे और सेम लिंक, सेम जो आपका लिंक पासवर्ड जो भी होता है वो दोनों एक ही रहेंगे।
सर इट विल बी सेम टाइम 4 to 5, राइट?
यस
राइट, ठीक है सर।
ओके, घर पे रहें, सुरक्षित रहें। थैंक यू
सर, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.